Some wounds don't bleed where people can see them. Some emergencies don't come with sirens. And sometimes the most dangerous moment in your life is not when your body begins to fail. It's when the people around you decide you are lying. The day I collapsed in class, I learned how quickly a room full of people can become blind when one person in authority tells them what to believe. I also learned something else. Truth may arrive late, but when it does, it is louder than every lie that came before it. My name is Viral. I was 16 years old when I hit the classroom floor and heard my teacher say I was pretending. By the time the truth reached her, I was already slipping away. It started long before I collapsed. Long before the sirens. Long before strangers in uniforms fought to keep my heart beating while my classmates watched in horror. It started in small ways, the kind adults dismiss because they are inconvenient. I would wake up tired even after sleeping all night. My hands would turn cold in warm rooms. Sometimes, in the middle of class, my chest would flutter like a trapped bird and then settle again before anyone noticed. I got dizzy standing up. I got headaches that sat behind my eyes like pressure. Some days I felt normal. Other days, I felt like I was carrying an invisible weight no one else could see. I told people. My mother worked double shifts and worried constantly, but money was tight and appointments took time we didn't always have. She told me we'd get it checked soon. At school, I mentioned it when it got bad. That was my mistake. At first, teachers nodded politely. Then they got annoyed. Then they started recognizing me as the girl who always feels sick. There is a dangerous thing adults sometimes do. They confuse repetition with dishonesty. If you ask for help once, they may listen. If you ask twice, they may sigh. If you ask a third time, some of them decide you are the problem. Miss Dranick was one of those people. She taught history. She liked strict rows, sharpened pencils, silent halls, and students who never needed anything. She believed discomfort built character. She believed teenagers exaggerated everything. She believed I was manipulative. I knew it from the way she looked at me whenever I raised my hand. I knew it from the tiny pause before she answered. I knew it from her smile that never reached her eyes. Again, she would say if I asked for the nurse. You were fine 5 minutes ago. You need to learn resilience. Sit down. The first few times I explained. Then I stopped. Because nothing drains hope faster than being honest with someone who has already decided not to believe you. That morning, I almost stayed home. I woke up tired, with that strange hollow feeling in my chest. My mother was already leaving for work, tying her hair back with one hand while searching for keys with the other. You okay? She asked. I almost said no. Instead, I smiled. I'm fine. Children lie like that to protect their parents. I got dressed slowly, packed my bag, and went to school. By the second period, I knew something was wrong. My fingers were cold. My pulse felt strange. The room tilted when I stood. I sat through math, gripping the edge of my desk. By the third period, history with Miss Dranick, the fluorescent lights felt too bright. The sounds of chairs scraping the floor made my skin crawl. Every breath felt shallow. I told myself to make it through the hour. Then I'd go to the nurse. Then I'd call my mom. Then everything would be fine. That is another lie people tell themselves when they are scared. Just get through the next 10 minutes. Miss Dranick stood at the front of the room, writing dates on the board in neat block letters. The class copied silently. I stared at the page and saw nothing. The words blurred. My heartbeat stumbled hard in my chest, paused, then raced. I raised my hand. She ignored it. I raised it higher. A few students glanced back. Finally, she sighed. Yes, Viral. My voice came out thinner than I expected. I don't feel well. Can I go to the nurse? Her expression didn't change. We just started. I feel dizzy. You always feel something. A few students laughed quietly. Heat rose into my face. Please, I said. No. Then she turned back to the board. The room returned to scratching pencils and shifting feet. I sat there swallowing panic. Maybe she was right. Maybe it would pass. Maybe I was overreacting. When people dismiss you long enough, you begin doing their work for them. 10 minutes later, my vision narrowed. The edges of the room dimmed. My hands trembled. I raised my hand again. This time, She looked irritated before I even spoke. What now? I really need the nurse. She set the marker down. Viral, you need to stop using minor discomfort to escape responsibility. It's not. Sit down. The room was silent now. Everyone listening. Everyone watching. I felt humiliation burn hotter than the fear. Then the floor moved beneath me. At least, it felt like it did. I stood too quickly. The room lurched sideways. A roaring filled my ears. I remember reaching for the desk. Missing. Then nothing. When awareness returned, I was on the floor. Cold tile beneath my cheek. The sharp smell of dry erase markers. Desk legs all around me like metal trees. I could hear everything, but I could not move. Not my hands. Not my legs. Not my mouth. My chest felt heavy, like someone had placed bricks on it. I tried to breathe deeper. Couldn't. Somewhere above me, someone laughed nervously. She does this all the time. Another voice whispered, is she crying? Then Miss Dranick. Flat. Certain. She's fine. I wanted to scream. I am not fine. I'm here. Please. My body stayed still. Seconds passed. Or minutes. Time becomes cruel when you are trapped inside yourself. Shoes moved around me. Someone asked if they should call the nurse. No, Miss Dranick said. Give her a moment. She wants attention. Attention. The words stabbed deeper than pain. Because I wanted the opposite. I wanted invisibility. I wanted to stand up and disappear. Instead, I lay there while my body fought something I didn't understand. Then my chest seized sharply. A student gasped. And finally, someone ran for help. The paramedics arrived fast. Not fast enough for me, but fast enough to change everything. The classroom door slammed open. Heavy footsteps. Equipment rattling. Then a man's voice, immediate and commanding. She's not responding. He dropped beside me. Hands at my wrist. Fingers at my neck. Another hand stabilizing my shoulder. Across the room, Miss Dranick answered in the tone of someone annoyed by disruption. She's pretending. Silence followed. The paramedic looked up at her. Not confused. Not intimidated. Not unsure. Just furious in the controlled way professionals become when they are trying not to show it. I'm reporting this. The room froze. Miss Dranick's face changed instantly. And for the first time that day, she looked uncertain. The paramedic leaned close. Viral, can you hear me? I screamed yes inside my skull. He must have seen something in my eyes. Blink if you can. I tried. Maybe I did. Maybe I imagined it. He turned to his partner, who had just entered. Unresponsive but aware. Possible syncopal episode. Irregular pulse. Then to Miss Dranick. How long has she been down? I don't know. A minute? 2. That was a lie. I had lived entire lifetimes on that floor. He looked at me again, then back at her. How long was she ignored? The room shifted. You could feel it. Students stopped being spectators. They became witnesses. Miss Dranick straightened. I assessed the situation. She requested help earlier, he asked. No answer. Then a voice from the back. Lisa. Quiet Lisa, who almost never spoke in class. She asked to go to the nurse twice. Miss Dranick snapped her head around. She asks often. Lisa didn't back down. She said she was dizzy. The second paramedic clipped a monitor to my finger. A shaky beep filled the room. He looked at the screen. Then at his partner. That rhythm isn't good. Those 5 words erased every remaining doubt in the room. The oxygen mask went over my face. Cool air rushed in. Still not enough. My chest clawed for breath. Blood pressure dropping, the second paramedic said. Miss Dranick stepped back. Is she going to be okay? No one answered her. The first paramedic lifted his radio. Possible cardiac involvement. Minor female. Altered responsiveness. Irregular pulse. Then he paused. Looked directly at Miss Dranick. Delayed response from supervising adult. The sentence landed like thunder. A student near the window raised a phone. Then another. Miss Dranick's voice sharpened. I did not delay anything. She asked for help, Lisa said. She asked twice, another student added. You said she was dramatic, someone else said. The room that had laughed minutes earlier now turned into a lie together. Authority is powerful. But once it cracks, people remember what they saw. My hearing began to fade. The voices moved farther away. The beeping sounded underwater. Pulse worsening, someone said. We need to move now. Hands slid beneath me. The stretcher straps tightened. The ceiling lights streaked overhead as they rushed me down the hall. I remember one sentence as clearly as if it were carved into stone. This could have turned fatal minutes ago. Could have. That phrase followed me into the ambulance. Into the sirens. Into the darkness. I woke in the hospital to steady beeping. Clean sheets. Dry mouth. Pain in my chest. My mother is asleep in a chair beside the bed, still in her work uniform, one hand wrapped around mine. There are some kinds of love that exhaustion cannot overpower. When I moved, she woke instantly. Then cried in a way I had never seen before, silent tears, shoulders shaking, face pressed to my hand. I'm sorry, she kept saying. For what, I still don't know. Maybe for not being there. Maybe for every time life had forced her to choose work over rest, bills over appointments, survival over certainty. None of it was her fault. But guilt often finds the people who loved you most. The doctor came later. He explained slowly. I had an underlying heart rhythm disorder. Episodes had likely been building for weeks. Stress and exertion may have triggered the collapse. The irregular rhythm had become dangerous. Then he said the sentence that hardened something inside me. The delay increased the risk significantly. Delay. Not exaggeration. Not weakness. Not drama. Delay. I closed my eyes. On the inside of my eyelids, I saw a classroom tile. Desk legs. Laughter. Recovery was not dramatic. No movie montage. No instant transformation. It was slow. Medication adjustments. Monitoring. More tests. Weak legs. Fear whenever my heartbeat changed pace. Nightmares where I was on the floor again and no one came. My mother barely left the hospital. She slept badly in chairs. Argued with insurance on the phone. Bought me socks because hospital blankets never warm your feet enough. Lisa visited once with a bouquet of flowers from a grocery store and an apology she didn't owe me. I should have spoken sooner, she said. You spoke when it mattered, I told her. She cried anyway. Outside the hospital room, the story kept moving. The paramedic filed a report. Detailed timeline. Observed condition. Witness statements. Concerns regarding negligence. Students shared videos recorded after I collapsed. In them, you could hear laughter. You could hear me being called dramatic. You could hear Miss Drainick say I was pretending. It sounded uglier when played back. Truth often does. The school district opened an investigation within days. Parents were furious. Not just because of me. Because every family suddenly imagined their own child asking for help and being ignored. Miss Drainick was placed on administrative leave. Then it was suspended pending review. Teachers whispered. Students speculated. Adults called it unfortunate. I called it predictable. Because people like her only face consequences when suffering becomes visible enough to inconvenience institutions. When I was strong enough to return to school, I almost refused. The building felt haunted. Every hallway held memory. Every fluorescent light reminded me of falling. My mother asked if I wanted to transfer. Part of me did. But another part of me knew something important. If I left because they failed me, then failure would own the space. So I went back. The morning I returned, my hands shook at the entrance doors. Lisa met me outside. You don't have to do today if you're not ready, she said. I know, I answered. Then we walked in together. That mattered more than she knew. The classroom looked smaller than I remembered. No Miss Drainick. A substitute teacher with gentle eyes stood at the front. He smiled softly when I entered. You can sit wherever you're comfortable. Not assigned. Not demanded. Comfortable. It was such a small sentence. I nearly cried. I sat at my old desk. Same angle. Same view. Same patch of floor where I had once stared helplessly upward. For a moment, my breathing quickened. Then the substitute noticed. Need water? Need a minute. I shook my head. But the question itself steadied me. Because this time someone had asked. Class began. Halfway through, another student raised her hand. Can I go to the nurse? I don't feel right. The substitute didn't sigh, didn't lecture, didn't question motive. He nodded immediately. Of course. The room stayed silent. No laughter. No eye rolls. No whispers. The girl left. I stared at the door long after it closed. Some changes are small enough to miss unless you know what used to happen there. Weeks later, the district released findings. They used formal language. Failure to follow medical response protocol. Disregard of student welfare concerns. Inappropriate dismissal of reported symptoms. Miss Drainick resigned before the termination proceedings finished. Some people said she was treated harshly. That everyone makes mistakes. That careers shouldn't be ruined over one bad judgment. Those people had never lain on a floor unable to breathe while being called a liar. Those people had never watched authority choose ego over care. A mistake is spilling coffee on the paperwork. A mistake is misreading a schedule. Ignoring a child in distress because you think you know better is something else entirely. I expected revenge to feel satisfying. It didn't. There was no celebration. No triumphant music. No moment where pain vanished because someone else paid a price. What I felt instead was quieter. Relief. The truth had been named. What happened to me would not be rewritten as an overreaction. No one could say I imagined it. No one could reduce it to teenage drama. Sometimes justice is not joy. Sometimes it is simply the ending of denial. Months passed. My health stabilized. Medication helped. I learned triggers. I learned warning signs. I learned that being careful with my body was not a weakness. I also learned how many people carried scars from not being believed. Students told me stories in whispers. Migraines dismissed as excuses. Anxiety is called laziness. Pain is labeled as attention-seeking. Girls especially knew this language. Too emotional. Too sensitive. Too dramatic. Too much. I started speaking at student wellness meetings. Then parent forums. Then teacher training sessions. The first time I stood at a podium, my knees shook. I looked at rows of adults who once would have terrified me. Then I told them exactly what it feels like to be conscious and helpless while authority narrates your suffering incorrectly. No one checked their phones. No one interrupted. Some cried. Good. They were supposed to. One evening, nearly a year later, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a short note. I was wrong. I should have listened. I think about that day constantly. I am sorry. No signature. It didn't need one. I stared at it for a long time. I thought I would feel anger. Instead, I felt tired. Then, unexpectedly, free. Because apologies matter, but not always in the way people think. They don't erase harm. They don't reverse fear. They don't give back lost breath on a classroom floor. What they can do is return responsibility to the person who owed it. I folded the note and placed it in a drawer. Then I never read it again. Forgiveness is personal. Sometimes it means embracing someone. Sometimes it means walking away without carrying them anymore. Graduation came 2 years later. I crossed the stage slower than some others because my heart still required caution. My mother stood in the crowd crying loudly enough to embarrass me properly. Lisa screamed my name. After the ceremony, I looked back at the school building glowing in late sunlight. The windows reflected the sky so brightly you couldn't see inside. I liked that. Some places don't deserve access to your memories anymore. Today, when people hear the story, they often focus on the collapse, the ambulance, the investigation, the consequences. But that is not the part one think about most. I think about the moment after. The girl in class who asked to go to the nurse. And the teacher who simply said yes. Because that is how real change usually looks. Not dramatic headlines. Not speeches. A different answer in an ordinary moment. A child says, I don't feel okay. And someone believes them. If you are the kind of person people dismiss, hear me now. Your pain does not become fake because others are inconvenienced by it. Your body does not need witnesses to deserve care. Needing help is not manipulation. Speaking up repeatedly is not attention-seeking. Sometimes repetition is what survival sounds like. And if you are the person with power, a teacher, parent, manager, doctor, coach, remember this. You may be the difference between embarrassment and emergency, between comfort and catastrophe, Between trust and trauma. Choose humility. Choose caution. Choose to listen. Because the cost of taking someone seriously for 10 minutes is small. The cost of refusing can echo for years. The last time I walked past that old classroom, the door was open. Desks arranged in rows. Sunlight crossing the floor. No laughter. No cruelty. Just students learning. I stood there only a second. Then I heard someone inside say quietly, "Miss, I'm not feeling well." And without hesitation, the teacher answered, "Go ahead. Take care of yourself." I smiled and kept walking. Some victories do not sound like applause. Sometimes they sound like being believed. And this time, no one had to collapse first.